Cain Velasquez was the most intimidating combat athlete of all time.
Cain Velasquez, in my humble opinion, when I look at all of the different heavyweights that I've personally seen fight, Cain stands out as the best. The reason why Cain stands out as the best is because he has superhuman endurance and his ability to put a pace on guys. You would see these guys just wilt under the pressure. I think with Cain, what did him in is probably what also brought him to the top, is his mental toughness, because his body started breaking down. He started having all these back injuries. He needed multiple back surgeries, shoulder surgery, knee surgery. Everything was getting fucked up. And I think it was getting fucked up because he was working through pain and because he has the ability to tolerate pain that most people don't have. He's just a fucking animal. But that's also probably what led to him having this insane endurance.
From UFC glory to a rage and revenge-induced decision that changed everything.
Former UFC champion who's been charged with attempted murder and more.
He found out that his son had been molested by a daycare worker, and he went after that guy, drove his car in a rage and shot a gun at him.
If you do that to one of my children, get on your bike, son. You better run.
You know, this is not fair. He's sitting in jail, and other guy, he's outside.
This is the story of Cain Velasquez.
Surprise, surprise! The king is back!
Everybody liked the guy. He comes in, he's a straight up badass that does not act like a badass, and he just wants to absorb information. And everything I've ever heard about Cain, there's no attitude, there's no ego, there's no I'm a tough guy. He just does what's asked of him, and when it's time to compete, he goes really, really hard and then gets really, really good results. But that's what Cain is.
Born on July 28, 1982 in Salinas, California, to a Mexican immigrant father and an American mother, he was raised in a home that preached hard work. That mentality would shape everything he did. The family eventually settled in Yuma, Arizona, where Cain attended Kofa High School.
Just watching them work day in and out, I think one of the hardest jobs is working out in the fields. You know, as you get older, you appreciate it more.
If you were in his weight class, you had a problem. He was a two-sport athlete, captaining both the wrestling and football teams. But wrestling was where he truly thrived. A machine on the mat, Cain stacked up an eye-watering 110-10 record, claiming 2 5A Arizona State Wrestling Championships. After high school, he bulldozed through Iowa Central Community College, winning the 2001 NJCAA National Championship in the 285-pound division.
The goal of being a national champion was everything. That's why I wrestled, was to be the best.
His dominance caught the eyes of top recruiters, and soon he was at Arizona State University, training alongside future UFC names like Ryan Bader and CB Dollaway.
Man, I remember being so scared of Cain Velasquez when I was I think I talked about this last time on your podcast, when I was a kid wrestling in college, because I was like this tiny ass little white boy wrestler, and Cain would walk around with just his singlet straps on and shorts, and he had brown pride tattooed across his chest. He's just huge heavyweight, wrestling D1 for ASU. I was just like so scared of that guy. I was like, damn, look at that guy, man.
By the time he graduated in 2006, Cain had earned Division I All-American honors and was crowned Pac-10 Conference Wrestler of the Year.
My time here at ASU just taught me, my work ethic. So I worked really hard on my schooling, worked really hard on my sport, and that was it. That's why I came here to ASU, was to wrestle. Whatever avenue that I'm in or whatever sport that I'm in, I'm always trying to be the best.
But pure wrestling wasn't enough. He craved more.
How did you go about getting into it and okay, I want to give MMA a shot?
My junior year of college, I knew I wanted to do something else. I just didn't know what. Wrestling wasn't enough for me anymore. I saw MMA, the UFC. I saw the strong wrestling influence that it had in it. So I thought this would be a good transition for me. But I wanted to start striking. I've always liked boxing as a kid. I've always liked karate movies, Bruce Lee. I saw the UFC kind of grow, and I saw that you could use your wrestling influence and also, learn the boxing and the stand-up, the karate. That's what intrigued me about the sport, and that's what made me want to do it.
What'd your parents think when you said you're going to get into this?
They didn't really understand it, My mom did. She wasn't for it. My dad didn't even, understand what I was saying, really. Yeah. None of my friends or family wanted me to do this. It just wasn't popular enough, with the public. Nobody understood it, really. I told my coach, and he told me, I can get you in touch with the right people and everything else. You just worry about getting your degree, finish out wrestling, and then we'll get it in gear.
Enter the American Kickboxing Academy in San Jose, California, where Cain honed his striking under the watchful eye of elite coaches Javier Mendez and David Camarillo.
For me, I think all the striking stuff just kind of came easy. And then the jiu-jitsu stuff, it's kind of like a hybrid of wrestling on the ground.
The transition to MMA wasn't just smooth, it was scary.
Did you have a lot of sparring sessions with Cain?
Cain was
not fun. I had to have Javier put a fucking leash on Cain, just ready to pull that bitch because his size and his veracity, I mean, he just had wrestling, striking, jiu-jitsu. He had everything. At the time when Cain, there was nobody that could touch Cain. I mean, he was fucking insane.
Cain picked him up real quick and slammed him, and he got the message. And I said, oh, wow, this guy's special. He is special. And I said, this guy's got what it takes. And there was light sparring. It wasn't real sparring. That's when I said, this guy's going to be the world champ.
I knew that with my pace and just my strengths and everything that I could beat anyone.
How was Cain? He's a man. He's a beast, man. He's so tough.
Just 16 months after lacing up the 4-ounce gloves, Velasquez tore through his first 2 opponents, leaving carnage in his wake. The UFC came calling, and the heavyweight division had no idea what was coming.
Cain actually got into the UFC because Dana respected the fact that nobody would fight him. He simply could not get a fight anywhere else. Cain Velasquez was the most intimidating combat athlete of all time. I am telling you, he was the most feared guy. I would be behind the curtain and see opponents, big names, studs, that did not want that curtain to be pulled back, that light to come on, and them to have to walk out.
Velasquez didn't just enter the UFC, he stormed in. Right from the jump, he was a different breed. Most heavyweights gassed after the first round. Cain, he only got stronger. His relentless wrestling pressure, non-stop motor, and increasingly lethal striking made him an absolute terror.
Because I never saw a heavyweight with that kind of endurance.
One by one, he steamrolled through the division, brutal knockouts, and relentless ground and pound. His fights rarely went the distance, and when they did, his opponents looked like they'd been through a war.
He was a monster.
Monster, man.
Everybody's terrified of that guy. What Cain would do to people, he would overwhelm you in a way that looked like you were drowning.
His cardio and pace was insane.
Insane.
Yeah.
He never got tired. They called him Cardio Cain.
5 straight UFC wins, 4 violent KOs. There was no denying it. Cain Velasquez was heading straight for gold.
He just seemed unstoppable because he was a heavyweight, but he had the cardio of a welterweight. And he had speed and precision, and he never was out of position. He was so fucking game.
The shot at the crown would come at UFC 121 on October 23, 2010. Cain Velasquez vs. Brock Lesnar. The reigning champion was an absolute monster, a 265-pound genetic freak. Many thought Lesnar's raw strength and wrestling pedigree would be too much. They thought wrong. Cain demolished Lesnar. From the opening bell, he outclassed the champ, stuffing takedowns, lighting him up on the feet, and never giving him a second to breathe. By the time he finished Lesnar via first-round TKO, it was clear a new king ruled the heavyweight division.
Everything that I did, from my wrestling days to first training MMA, was for that moment. It was like a dream come true.
Cain Velasquez is the UFC Heavyweight Champion!
But the throne didn't stay his for long. In 2011, Cain's first title defense came against Junior dos Santos, a Brazilian knockout artist with dynamite in his hands. It was the UFC's grand debut on Fox, a massive platform for Velasquez to showcase his dominance. But in a shocking twist, JDS landed one clean overhand right, and just like that, in under a minute, Cain's title was gone. For most fighters, a loss like that is career altering, but Cain wasn't most fighters. At UFC 146, he bounced back with a first round bloodbath over Antonio Bigfoot Silva, setting up a rematch with dos Santos. This time, it was different. This time, Cain came to break him. At UFC 155, Velasquez delivered one of the most one-sided beatdowns in UFC history. 5 rounds of relentless pressure, takedowns, and unrelenting punishment. JDS had no answers. By the final bell, Cain had reclaimed his title, and the rivalry had only just begun. Their trilogy fight at UFC 166 in 2013 was the final stamp on Velasquez's dominance. He smothered dos Santos, mauling him until sheer exhaustion set in. Despite taking some heavy shots in the blood-spilt bout, Velasquez's conditioning and ability to push forward never wavered, and Cardio Cain outlasted JDS in the war that it was. Cain secured the win, solidifying his position as the undisputed champion and further enhancing his legacy in the sport. The fight was brutal, bloody, and definitive. Cain Velasquez was without question the most dominant heavyweight of his era.
When he was at the top of the food chain, he would put a fucking storm on these people that was just like a 100-year storm that would never end.
Who is the greatest UFC heavyweight fighter of all time?
Cain Velasquez.
Oh, he's the best.
You think he's the best heavyweight of all time?
I think he's the best.
His ability to dictate the pace of a fight, wear down opponents, and never stop coming forward made him one of the most feared heavyweights in UFC history.
He's was fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
And was like nothing anybody had ever seen. Guys would get this 1,000-yard stare in their eyes when they'd be in like the second round with him. They couldn't believe they had 4 more rounds to go. This is fucking insane.
Yes.
And that guy
and
would
he's
just be
not breathing heavy.
No, just fucking marching you down, beating your ass.
Performances against the best fighters in the world earned him a reputation as one of the greatest heavyweights the sport had ever seen. But then, everything changed.
There's an argument when Cain was at his very best, like when he beat Brock, when Cain was just destroying everybody. There's an argument that he's the greatest, but his run was less because he was so tough that he broke his body. Tore his knees, his shoulder, his back, everything. Everything just started giving out. And then he got to a certain point in his life where he just like, his body just didn't perform anymore.
Every fighter that I know of has a little injury here and there going in. You know, I've fought with injury before. You don't disclose it. Why are you going to let it out there and let your opponent know that you're hurt? You don't do that. Keep it all in. You only tell the closest people next to you that are in your camp that you know that won't get out. We get injured all the time in training, but we don't tell anybody else.
As dominant as Cain Velasquez was inside the octagon, his greatest opponent was never another fighter. It was his own body. Despite his incredible athleticism and skill, injuries plagued his career and ultimately prevented him from reaching his full potential.
Cain is another one that was so stoic and he would never complain. And also the
you
training
know
sessions.
that he's hurt.
Yeah, and the training session, I mean, him and DC were just going to war all the time. And AKA was just this talent-filled shark tank of a bunch of assassins just beating the fuck out of each other. And you're going to get banged up.
During his prime, Velasquez was renowned for his high-tempo pace and pressure. The physical toll of his extreme training regime began to take effect. Over the years, he suffered a series of debilitating injuries, including rotator cuff tears, knee problems, bone spurs, and chronic back issues.
But back stuff is weird. It seems like once things start going, it's like a car. Once a ball joint blows out and the axle starts grinding, and you're like, oh, Jesus. It's like a bunch of shit's going to go wrong.
These injuries sidelined him for extended periods, disrupting his momentum and limiting his ability to defend his title consistently.
Well, he had shoulder
surgery. And in 2013, look at those gaps.
Yep.
Dang.
2-year gaps.
Yep.
2-year gaps, 1 year, 2 year again.
That's rough, man.
Yeah, it is. It is rough.
Especially when this is your job and how you get paid.
You just kind of get in the habit of, okay, I have this injury here. What's the soonest I can get back?
Most heartbreaking injury that Cain's had, I believe, was his back. Everybody thought his career's over, it's done. The surgery didn't go quite as planned.
Just kind of caught up with me, you know, it was just too much. I couldn't do it. Just recently, you know, all the injuries and everything else, something does need to happen, you know, in my training to just to make the fight, because that is the most important thing, is to actually make the fight. Me as a provider for my family, as a thing that I love to do.
One of the defining moments of his decline came at UFC 188 in 2015, where he was scheduled to defend his heavyweight title against Fabricio Verdum. Originally, the two were set to fight in late 2014 at UFC 180. But knee injuries forced Velasquez to withdraw. When they finally met from the opening bell, Velasquez looked off. His usual relentless pace was nowhere to be seen. Instead of overwhelming Verdum, Cain quickly gassed out. His movements were sluggish, and his strikes were labored. By the third round, a gassed Velasquez shot for a desperate takedown, only to get caught in a guillotine choke and submitted. Fans were stunned. How did a fighter known for his unmatched endurance suddenly fade so quickly? The answer, the 7,300-foot elevation of Mexico City. Verdum, who had smartly acclimated to the high-altitude conditions by training in Mexico City for over a month prior, picked him apart on the feet. Unlike Verdum, Cain arrived just 2 weeks before the fight, far too short a time to properly acclimate. The thin air drained his gas tank, and before he knew it, the fight was over, and he had lost the title in what was considered a shocking upset.
That feels like, you know, we talk about the altitude and how it's so different,
So they're like, you kind of get a misconnection from your mind to your body, I would say. You don't really feel like the air, and you're not getting air. You kind of get to a point where your body isn't working, and your mind is like telling it to, come on, let's, and it's not doing anything. And you're just thinking to yourself like, holy shit, I'm tired. Like, what the hell?
And thus, the legend of Sea-Level Cain was born. Following the defeat, injuries continued to derail his career, inflicting long layoffs and many failed comebacks that kept him from competing regularly. A rematch between Velasquez and Verdum was planned for February 2016, but Velasquez would be forced to withdraw from the bout due to a back injury.
People criticize why I pulled out of fights, you know, really close to their fight. It's like, well, yes, we get hurt, and we'll try to work through it, and sometimes we can, sometimes we can't. We've been criticized for sparring too hard, but hey, you know, that's the best way to get ready for a fight, we think. You know, it's proven.
He would manage to make it back to the Octagon in July, taking on Travis Brown at UFC 200 in a performance that many described as his last squeeze of juice.
Do you feel like your body can hold up to not only the fights that you have, but how you push yourself in training and put yourself through so much in training? Can your body stand up to that much longer?
As far as in the past to what I've changed now, in the past, I would come into practice and just have the mentality of just going hard, and sometimes I wouldn't even stretch out, I'd be like, okay, I'm ready to go. I'm going to go in and just, bust my ass and get through a practice and get better. Now it's a lot more maintenance, it's a lot more getting warmed up really good right before practice and afterwards. And I feel like, with no injuries this whole camp, everything's been going good. It's helped out a lot. So I can see the longevity now, with me doing a lot more maintenance in my body before and after practice, and all I can say is it's helped me. So
he managed to successfully put Brown down to earn the stoppage win, but this victory would be short-lived with the amount of injuries that continued to affect him, and this was the last time Velasquez would have his hand raised in the Octagon. The UFC would once again attempt to book a rematch between him and Verdum for UFC 207 in December. With all looking well and green-lighted, just weeks before the expected bout, it was known that Velasquez was having difficulty even standing upright any longer than 10 minutes because of pain in his lower body. He was scheduled to have back surgery just 5 days after UFC 207. These factors sparked serious concerns about the medical condition of Velasquez, and on December 24th, the Nevada State Athletic Commission ruled Velasquez medically ineligible for the bout, thus canceling the rematch.
UFC 207 loses a big bout as the former heavyweight champion Cain Velasquez forced to pull out of this fight again with Fabrizio Verdum. Injuries are just too much for Cain Velasquez. I like this. If you're too injured to fight, don't do it.
Well, he's declared medically unfit.
When you're a fighter and you do an interview days before a fight and say, you can't stand for 10 minutes, that's insanity. It's the best organization in the world for fighting. He's fighting one of the best fighters on earth, and that fight lasts 15 minutes. And if you can't stand for 10 minutes, what are you going to do in a fight against one of the, how irresponsible it would be? It absolutely makes no sense.
Nearly 3 years later, Cain Velasquez made his long-awaited return against Francis Ngannou in 2019.
What was your life like when you step away from fighting?
Staying more busy than I was fighting. With the birth of my son, I wanted to be there for the whole first year of his life, and just to kind of step away from the sport, just fix all the nagging injuries, let my body rest, but also let my mind rest.
My friend and yours, El Campeón, Cain Velasquez versus Francis Ngannou, the long-awaited, much-anticipated return of the former UFC heavyweight champion.
But his body betrayed him once more. Just seconds into the fight, his knee buckled.
Taking that one step I did with my left foot, I just felt something pop,
leading to a swift knockout loss.
Going in 100% healthy, 100% ready, just to kind of have this just freak accident, It's just hard, My knee gave out on me. I can't even believe that happened.
It was clear his body could no longer withstand the rigors of elite competition, and in October 2019, Velasquez retired from MMA. His career, once destined for legendary status, was ultimately marred by inactivity and injury, leaving fans to wonder what could have been had his body held up. After retiring from MMA, Velasquez transitioned to professional wrestling, embracing his Mexican heritage by training in Lucha Libre. He debuted with Lucha Libre AAA in 2019, impressing fans with his surprising agility and high-flying moves for a heavyweight.
Cain Velasquez is going to be a much bigger wrestling superstar than he ever was an MMA star. Trust me, I watched him go out there and do his thing in AAA, and I must say he did a really, really good job. For a guy having a debut match, it might have been the best debut match I ever saw a guy ever have.
His performances caught the attention of WWE, leading to a high-profile signing later that year.
So Triple H, news broke just moments before this press conference today that Cain Velasquez retired from UFC and is now signed to WWE. How huge of an acquisition is that for us?
It's big. Whenever you can get a level of athlete like a Cain Velasquez, it's a Ronda Rousey moment, but at a different level. He is now a WWE superstar. He is now fully engaged with us.
It's tough as well. It's tough on the body. It's tough mentally, but it's fun. This is what I love to do. I love to compete and work out, and I get to do that here.
In an attempt to capitalize on their shared UFC history, WWE had Cain appear with Rey Mysterio on an episode of SmackDown on October the 4th to intimidate Brock Lesnar.
That's not Oh my God, it is!
All of a sudden, music hits. Nobody knows whose music, because Cain's never come out before. And some guy starts walking down the ramp. Now, the average fan in the building wasn't able to react to that. They just don't know who he is. MMA fans watch wrestling, but it's not the other way around.
Brock Lesnar has seen a ghost!
This led to a highly anticipated match between them at WWE Crown Jewel in 2019.
Cain is missing one element. And it's not just the star power. He can make that up in a short period of time. We saw Ronda do that. Here's Cain's problem, is he can't cut a promo.
Yeah, I think Cain is a bit more long-term on a developmental. Like, he wants to be a WWE superstar now. I think some of the personality stuff for him, different kinds of fighters, right? You have the McGregor fighter in MMA that is just loud and out there and cocky and all the other things. And then you have a fighter like Cain that was taught, don't show emotion, keep everything in check. So it's tough for him to turn all the emotions on that he doesn't necessarily have. Yeah, he's kind of pushed that out of his system.
The storyline was supposed to mirror the infamous fight at UFC 121, where Velasquez had brutally dethroned Lesnar to become the heavyweight champion. However, unlike the MMA showdown, the WWE match was a major disappointment, lasting only about 2 minutes before Lesnar forced Velasquez to tap out to a Kimura lock. Yes, the same man who had made Lesnar literally sprint across the octagon before brutally finishing him was now being fed to him in the scripted world. The lackluster performance and his inexperience in pro wrestling led WWE to reconsider their investment. By April 2020, amid budget cuts due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Velasquez was released from his contract.
Cain actually got let go over this week. He was one of the guys who got released. What do you think about the legacy of Cain Velasquez?
He just happened to be a casualty of war that we're going through with this pandemic.
Although he briefly returned to Lucha Libre in 2021, his wrestling career never fully took off. Just as it seemed like his athletic pursuits might continue, a shocking turn of events derailed everything.
Former UFC champion who's been charged with attempted murder and more. Cain Velasquez appearing in court, now being held without bail.
Did he actually shoot people?
Yeah.
Exclusive video shows what appears to be MMA legend Cain Velasquez chasing after the man he allegedly shot.
Velasquez fired at least 7 rounds, shooting into a truck and injuring one person.
Goulart's stepdad was ultimately shot in the arm and treated for a non-life-threatening injury. Goulart's sister, who was also in the vehicle, identified Velasquez as the gunman. He was later spotted by police and arrested without incident. Police recovered a legally registered .40 caliber semi-automatic handgun in Velasquez's truck that had been fired 3 times. Multiple bullet casings were also found at the scene.
In February 2022, Velasquez's life took an unexpected and tragic turn when he was arrested for attempted murder. However, unlike many athlete scandals, his case garnered overwhelming sympathy and support from the MMA community. The incident stemmed from an intensely personal situation. Velasquez allegedly pursued and fired gunshots at Harry Goularte, a man accused of molesting his 4-year-old son at a daycare run by Goularte's mother. Frustrated by what he saw as a failing justice system, Goularte had been released on bail. Cain took matters into his own hands, engaging in a high-speed chase and firing multiple rounds from a .40 caliber handgun. In the chaos, he mistakenly shot Goularte's stepfather, Paul Bender, who sustained non-life-threatening injuries.
Cain's issue is it's premeditated because they knew the day the guy was going to get out. You need it to go to a jury because his defense is going to be, madness and wasn't premeditated, just flip the fuck out because the guy posted bail. So he needs the jury to be like, we have kids, we get it. The worst thing is that kid gets molested and now she doesn't have her dad.
But a judge let Goularte out of jail, something Velasquez supporters don't understand.
The guy who did that is out.
What?
Yeah, the guy who did that is out on bail. And Cain was in jail at the same time. It's one of the most terrifying situations a father could ever find themselves in, and not just know that that guy is out, but that you're in prison and that your wife is home with your children and this guy who has already targeted your kid. Who knows how fucking sick he is? He might try to target him again while you are in jail, because and you might be in jail forever. Who knows? You might be in jail for 30 years.
The MMA world rallied behind Velasquez, with fighters and fans alike viewing his actions as those of a desperate father seeking justice.
I want to go to see him, shake his hand, give him good energy. Anybody in the world who respect himself, who love his family, is gonna do same thing. Exactly. Come on, nobody gonna think about law or something when you have something about your family. You have to protect your family.
I know he did something stupid. He shouldn't do that way, but
I think that justice need to be very careful on that. You know, his son was being abused. It bothered me a lot.
You know, this is not fair. He sit in jail, and other guy, he's outside. Put this guy jail too. He's more dangerous for people than Cain Velasquez. Cain dangerous only for one man.
One guy.
Yes, but this guy dangerous for anybody.
I think the fact that this is getting so much publicity because of what Cain did, I think is only going to hurt that guy when it comes time to court.
Bro, anyone puts their hands on my child, I'm going to turn into a vigilante. If you do that heinous, disgusting, unthinkable, so bad that I don't even want to say it crime, if you do that to one of my children, fucking get on your bike, son. You better run.
Despite the support, the legal consequences were severe. He was denied bail multiple times and remained in jail for over 8 months.
Going to file another motion asking that he be released. We will do that between now and May 6th.
There's a balance. And I think so many people, when we say free Cain and go support Cain Velasquez, it's like we are not by any means saying that what Cain Velasquez did was right. It was not right. You can't do that. What we're saying is look at the whole story, or at least the story that we have. But I can only support Cain in the way that I can, is being at every court appearance, talking to him on the phone when he calls me, trying to make sure that his mental is kind of staying together, because I mean, I can only imagine being in jail for that long. It's hard because so many people say that they would do exactly what he did, but he did, so.
Before finally being granted bail in November 2022 under strict conditions, including GPS monitoring and house arrest.
Yesterday, a judge granted Cain Velasquez bail at around midnight last night. Velasquez, as you can see in this video, he walked out of the main jail in downtown San Jose with a smile on his face.
Thank you to everybody who had my support. I love all of you. Just always continue to be better as a person. Always do good things. Just make something positive of this terrible situation, you know. My family and I, we're going to do that.
Cain Velasquez,
Yes.
your friend out on bail, just kind of your initial reaction to the whole thing.
I was happy. I was very happy. They've been through a lot in the last 8 months as a family. I could never try to attempt to tell you what that felt like for Cain Velasquez, because I've never been in a situation like he's been in. You know, from the phone calls to the visits, he put on a brave face, but I could tell he was hurting, you know, and it hurts us to see him in that situation.
Thankfully, Cain Velasquez, at least for the time being, is at home. Any thoughts on Cain finally, after 8 months sitting in jail, being home with his family, Dana?
Yeah, I'm happy for him and his family to finally be back together. Cain Velasquez is a good man. He's a good person. And I'm hoping that the judge that looks at this case says, you know what? This family suffered enough. As if the kids haven't suffered enough in this thing. They lost their father for almost a year. Hopefully, the real justice gets served in this case. And Cain Velasquez, who is a good man, a good father, a good husband, gets to be at home with his family.
As of now, Velasquez's legal battles continue, and the outcome remains uncertain.
What Velasquez did was reckless, dangerous, and probably illegal, but probably something a lot of people would agree with. This is a father that many people are seeing is protecting his 4-year-old son. This could easily also be a mistrial or a hung jury, because if one holdout says, I'm not going to find him guilty, that ruins the prosecution's entire case.
His case has ignited debates about vigilante justice and the flaws in the legal system.
If you don't believe me, ask yourself, what would you let a father do to a man who sexually assaulted their child? Find 12 people to agree to the same thing.
Terry, let's play this out a little bit, okay? So if Velasquez is successful in arguing, as Brian just mentioned, heat of passion, which is such an interesting kind of defense given the circumstances here, if he's convicted of that, you think it'll change the severity of the sentence?
Well, you know, it should, Jesse, because it is a mitigating factor. Heat of passion means that you were provoked by the victim. And here, in any other case, this is definitely a provocation. I think that if they can argue that it was heat of passion, he'll go easy at the end of the day. The judge is going to go easy on him. He's being charged with 10 different counts: assault, attempted murder, and of course these gun possession charges. One thing I will say, Jesse, I do think he should serve some time. We cannot have vigilante justice like this, and we have to send that message.
With many arguing that the real injustice was Galate's release, while Velasquez faced the full force of the law.
He's from AKA. He's one of the greatest heavyweights of all time. In his prime, maybe the best. They finally let him out on bond, and now he's coaching at AKA. And I don't know what the status of his case is, but Cain is an exceptional human being. He's
Totally.
an amazing human being. Every
Most of the
dad,
world.
every dad who heard that was like,
Like, yeah.
I fucking get it.
There's a
I'm
GoFundMe.
on Team Cain all day.
We
Just
all
strangle him.
every-
Cain Velasquez's career is a tale of dominance, potential, and heartbreaking what-ifs. At his best, he was arguably the most complete heavyweight in MMA history. However, injuries robbed him of a truly legendary reign. Had he remained healthy, could Cain have been the greatest heavyweight of all time? His rivalries, particularly his trilogy with Junior dos Santos and his destruction of Brock Lesnar, showcased his brilliance. But his 2022 arrest overshadowed everything that came before it.
Yeah, you know, it's been a while since we talked, and I know a lot has been going on in your life. I want to give you a hug and a kiss off the bat, my man. And you know how many people have your back in this community and in this sport, certainly on this show. And so, you know, I just want to give you some love and say how much we are pulling for you and thinking of you. My understanding is you can't probably talk about any of this, right? You have a big date coming up in January. That's accurate, correct?
Yeah, January 24th, I have a sentencing. We'll kind of see what happens, but I've been doing the best that I can, you know.
Okay. You doing good, though? Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually?
Yes, always, man. No, man, I am blessed just to be here, you know. I'm loving life. I'm loving growth. I'm loving everyone around me growing.
Instead of being remembered solely as an all-time great fighter, his name is now tied to legal struggles, vigilante justice, and an uncertain future. Regardless of how his story ends, Velasquez remains a legend in MMA. His career will always be a mix of triumph and tragedy, leaving fans to wonder just how much greater could he have been if his body had not betrayed him.